morning, Simpsonville Baptist Church. Good morning. Yeah, great to have you this morning with us. If you have your Bible, go ahead and turn open to Nehemiah chapter 6. It's where we're going to be at. What if I told you that maybe tomorrow or next week, maybe a year from now, potentially 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that you were going to have a test, an exam you were going to have to take. And based on the results of that exam, you and everyone that you know, their future would be at stake, whether good or bad. That would be a pretty big exam, wouldn't it? Some of us in the room, who would pull an all-nighter? Who's my all-nighters in the room? All right, I got you. Listen, I've tried to pull all-nighters in the past, and that did not work out for me. Maybe it works out a little bit better for you. But some of us in the room, we'd start trying to prepare for whatever that test would bring about, right? You try to start studying maybe on certain days or certain weekends. You would do certain things. You would try to even take different classes to help you even prepare for that exam because it's trivial. It's huge. It's very important that you perform well. Perform very well. You know, the Bible says, and it really depicts, that life consists of many different tests or trials. And a lot of times it's not a test of performance necessarily. To some degree, some of it is, but a lot of it comes down to your character or your integrity. And so today we are welcomed into many of the tests that Nehemiah took in chapter 6. This was once again about 500 years before Jesus came, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. And here he is trying to build a wall because God had called him to do it with a group of people. And there's other nations outside of the people that are building this wall that are looking to disturb them. And so they've tried many different ways to harm their work, to get them to stop what they were doing. And in chapter 6, they go to even a greater stake. So if you would, let's go ahead and stand in honor of his word. Chapter 6, starting in verse 1. Now when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built the wall and that there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set up the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me saying, come and let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono. But they intended to do me harm. And I sent messengers to them saying, I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? And they sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner. In the same way, Sanballat for the 5th time sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, it is reported among the nations, and Geshem also says it, that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you're building the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become their king. You've also set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, there's a king in Judah, and now the king will hear of these reports. So now come and let us take counsel together. Then I sent to him saying, no such thing as you say has been done, for you are inventing them out of your own mind. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking, oh, their hands will drop from the work and it will not be done. But now, oh God, strengthen my hands. Now when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of Mehetabel, it was a tough one, who was confined to his home, he said, let us meet together in the house of God within the temple. Oh, let us close the doors of the temple, for they're coming to kill you. They're coming to kill you by night. But I said, should such a man as I run away? What man such as I could go into the temple and live? I will not go in. And I understood and saw that God had not sent him, but he had pronounced a prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this purpose he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin, and so they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, O God, according to these things that they did, and also the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. You can be seated. Right out of the gate in verse 1, chapter 6, if you have your Bible, I'd love for you to follow along with me. We see these individuals, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. If you would, go ahead and turn over to Nehemiah chapter 2. Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 10. We're welcome to them. We're introduced to them, and it says, when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite servant heard this, it displeased them greatly that someone had come to seek the welfare of the people of Israel. It displeased them greatly. What displeased them? It was the action for which they were sent for, to accomplish, to rebuild the wall and to begin to be a blessing to the people of Israel, which were very vulnerable at that time. We've talked about that in the last couple weeks. Move on to staying in chapter 2, verse 19. It says, when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite servant and Geshem the Arab heard of it, they jeered at us and despised us and said, what is this thing you're doing? Are you rebelling against the king, the greatest king of all time, King Artaxerxes that rules the world? Are you rebelling against him? Moving on, chapter 4, verse 1. Let's hear again. Now, when Sanballat heard that we were building the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged. He jeered at the Jews. So he moves from chapter 2, verse 10, being displeased, then going to despising, not just the work that they were doing, but despising him as a leader and also all of the Jews. Then they become enraged to the point of verse 8 in chapter 4. Check it out. It says, and they all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause confusion in it. Do you have anybody that's coming after you like this? People that despise what you do, and they also despise who you are. They want to take you down. Not just talking a big game, taunting you, but also looking to plot, make a plan of how to take you out. That's what Nehemiah and all the people of Israel were enduring for around a month and a half, close to 2 months, 52 days. And none of these plans worked. You see it in even chapter 4, verse 15. If you read this together. Verse 15. When our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had frustrated their plan, we all returned to the wall, each to his own work. None of their schemes worked. And so that's why they're striking again in chapter 6, verse 1, because the wall is getting ready to be completed. Some of them already think it is completed. They've built most of the wall, most of the gates. The next thing that they have to lay is the doors. You see that in verse 1. And so here's the first test that he endures, Nehemiah. If he can't take out the people, maybe he can start to, somewhat discredit Nehemiah. If you can discredit a leader, most of the time, you can take out all of the people he leads. And that's what's going on here. The tactics switched from seeking to discourage the builders to dispose of or discredit Nehemiah. There are people out there that want to discredit you. They want to take you out. Maybe it's because of the role that you play within your organization that you work for. Maybe you're a Christian and you play on a sports team. And everybody knows you stand out like maybe not a sore thumb to them, but a wonderful light to Jesus. They're looking to discredit you. One of the first ways is a test of distraction. We see that they invite Nehemiah out to meet in the plain of Ono. You see this in verse 2. come and let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono. And just hearing, the phrase, oh no, means, hey, Nehemiah, you probably shouldn't go there, right? Oh no, you shouldn't go. But, this was probably a normal thing to some degree back then, when kings would pull together. Man, it's important. If there's a lot of nations that are collecting together across the world, most of the people, if they have access to that meeting, kings or presidents, they want to be there. They want to hear what's being said because they don't know if maybe there's a team being formed to go against them. And so they welcome them into their meeting, which is about a day and a half's journey outside of Jerusalem. It's in between Jerusalem and Samaria, which is where Sanballat was king at the time. And so it would have made sense, potentially, for Nehemiah to go out there. Even though he knew all those nations were against him, potentially he could step in and try to help navigate and shift the conversation away from him to someone else. But what did he do? When you face a test of distraction, you need to focus on your calling. You need to focus. I've had multiple conversations with some of you. You can sometimes wonder, what is God calling me to do? Well, a lot of times that answer is right here. You don't have to go searching for it. God makes most of life very, very clear and plain to us. But a lot of times we want to make it more difficult. We kind of confuse the words of God and thinking about what should I actually do? How should I spend my time? What does he want me to do next year for the rest of my life? When really God just wants us to focus in on the moment. And that's what Nehemiah does. Do you see what he says? He says, I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? I'm doing a great work. Now, he's not saying that in a way of like patting himself on the back. Look at what I've done. No, what he's saying is the word great is used in magnitude of importance. This is extremely important. What are the most important things in your life as a Christian? Honestly, what's extremely critical that you do or believe in your life? Because a lot of times, there's going to be distractions that's going to be coming from every which direction. Most of you have phones, don't you? Can you raise your hand if you have a phone? No way. You all have a phone? Huh. That means someone can call you, text you, email you, and tell you what you should be distracted by. All the time. All the time. All of us, it doesn't take someone else to come and distract you. Most of us are distracted in and of ourselves. How many apps do you have in the room? All right? How many apps? If we were to count all the apps in the room that are on our phones, it would be unbelievable. Unbelievable. And all of those apps are put on your phone for a reason. Sometimes it makes sense to have it. Like when you're checking your bank account, making sure things are going the way that it should. But some of us, we have other apps, and it's okay to have apps that are like playing games and different things like that. But what's most important in your life? Most of the time, if we were to open up our phones, it would tell us what is most important by the first little slide on your smartphone. And then maybe the second slide, third slide, fourth slide. What's extremely important to you? Because I promise, if you don't know what's important, you'll never get it. You'll never hit it. It's kind of like trying to throw a dart and not knowing where the bullseye is. You're aiming every which direction. We are the most distracted culture in all of the earth and also throughout all generations. And there's so much pressure. I've talked about this probably multiple times, that as a human being, we ought to be great at everything. But Nehemiah chose to be great at building the wall. He chose to be great at doing what God called him to do. He remembered all the way back in Susa Citadel. 52 days ago, God told me to go build the wall. And by golly, I'm not going to stop. No one's going to distract me from what's most important. What's most important to you? 4 different times they send this letter to him. You see it in verse 4. 4 times this way they sent, come and let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono. Sent it again. Come and let us meet together at Hakkephirim in the plain of Ono. Hakkephirim means lion. So if Ono doesn't let you know to not go, maybe a lion waiting in the valley, getting ready to devour you, is enough evidence for you. But they continue to say it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. And what does he do every single time? No, I'm doing a great work here. I cannot come down. Why should I leave the work to come down to you? I can't do it. And then in verse 5, we see that there's a 5th letter that goes out. But it's odd. It says that this 5th time, there was an open letter. See, back then, especially in Persia, there's a couple different books with Ezra and Esther that talks about when a king sends a letter, he would put clay on the back of it or potentially on the front. And he would put clay and he would take his ring and kind of seal it shut to make sure that no one opens that letter but the one who is receiving it, but also to let the person, the recipient of that letter, know that it came straight from his throne. But he sends an open letter this time. What might be some of the reasons for an open letter? Well, because this letter, to some degree, when Nehemiah would take hold of it, he would understand that someone else has read it. Maybe not just one person, 2 people, potentially tons of people have read what Sanballat is saying. And what did he say in this letter? It says, it is reported among the nations in Geshem, and also says it to you. Says it that you and the Jews intend to rebel. Even if that were not to be true, which it's not, when everyone else is hearing a rumor about you, most of the time, what are they going to do? Believe it. And that's what's going on. He's intimidating him, a test of intimidation. He makes the first claim in verse 6a about rebellion. But then later in that verse 6, he says Nehemiah desires to rule as king, which was a lie. It was a lie, straight from Sanballat, from those other men. In the previous chapter, we see that Nehemiah was called a governor. He was no longer just a cupbearer to the king because he held that prominent position all the way back in chapter 1 and chapter 2. We saw that. But also, he's a governor. He's got a lot of authority. He's got a lot of power. With great power comes great responsibility. And he's starting to tempt. Sanballat's trying to use his influence to intimidate this man. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? You know, there's another thing in verse 7. It says that Nehemiah has also tried to convince other prophets to begin to prophesy that there's going to be another king. During that time, Zechariah was prophesying a little bit before his time, but more than likely, many people had already been hearing some of Zechariah's preaching. Another book in the Bible, Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9, says it speaks about a king who will come with righteousness and have salvation in his hand. He'll be gentle, riding on a donkey. And even though many of us in the room, we know that that is referring back to who? Jesus. Great answer. Sunday school answer. Everybody gets it right. Everybody gets a prize, right? We know that it's talking about Jesus, but when Zechariah was preaching this, people didn't know Jesus was coming. Could Nehemiah be this king? What great intimidation, what great fear could come about. If someone is sending a text out about you, maybe they took a picture of you, which happens. Listen, somebody takes a picture and the picture goes from this point to another point to another point. AI can do about anything these days, right? Can conform a picture about you that's not even true, and then it's sent out across the town. And it's ruining not just your reputation, but your family's reputation. You know what sometimes people do? They run, or they take themselves out. They're so afraid. What are you afraid of? This is really coming down to a fear of man. A fear of man. Do you fear people and what they think about you? Some of us in the room would say no, but the Bible give a different picture. Anybody in the room struggle with pleasing people? Huh? You avoid confrontation, even though you know you're right. Most of the time we're wrong, but let's just be honest. Some of us, we avoid confrontation. You just want to keep peace, even though you know that peace is superficial. It's not real. Some of us in the room, we seek approval or validation. If we were honest, we would want to be the hero of everyone's story. Down to the core, we would love people to love us. It's true. Now, some of you may think twice about it, but if you dig down deep, if people hate your guts, wouldn't you want them not to? If they don't hate your guts, what do you want them to do? Just kind of like you just a little? Just a little? That's having a fear of what people think. We fear the loss of comfort or status based on how people view us. We fear a lot of things. The danger of exalting people above God. Most of us, we have a fear of people. When we get in front of a certain person, we start to guard our lips a little bit more. Our hands start to sweat. We're more careful around them than if we were around someone else. It's kind of like what James talks about. When you're around people that are very powerful and wealthy, we act different than when we're around someone that's poor and has no influence at all. Because we think we're better than this person, but worse than this. And the Bible paints a picture that all of us fear all sorts of different things, really. But we struggle to fear God. And that's really what's coming down to what Nehemiah has to make a decision about. Have you ever heard this? Proverbs 29:25 says, "The fear of man lays a snare." You know what a snare is? It's a trap. The fear of man is a trap. If you try to please everybody and all their opinions about you, you're a sunk ship. You're in a trap. Won't be able to move, won't be able to have freedom. You're enslaved to everyone's opinion about you. Listen, the fear of man is a trap, but the fear of the Lord is freedom. Freedom. Oh man, freedom. Now, some of us in the room, we think, well, why does God make us? Why does he need us to be afraid of him? Why does God need us to fear him? It's not that he needs you to fear him. You need. It's you the one that's in need of fearing him, of seeing him as big and massive, amazing. Isaiah chapter 40 talks about how God holds all of the waters of the earth in the hollow of his hand. It's like he just cups it out. You know how much water we can get in there? Not much, even for a simple drink. Sufficient. You know how God measures the heavens with a span of his finger. That's how God measures it. That's what Isaiah 40 tells us. And if you fear the Lord, you're going to be one who waits upon the Lord. You remember this in verse 31. They who wait upon the Lord will mount up with wings like eagles. They'll soar. But the fear of man's like a bird that's trapped and he's getting ready to be eaten for lunch. Where are you at? Are you afraid of people, what they think of you? Oh, for freedom, Christ has set us free, Christians. Don't you dare fear some cubs when you have the Lion of Judah with you. Don't fear him. I say the same thing for myself. When you take the test of intimidation, fear God and not man. The third test is a test of deception through false prophecy. False prophecy, we see it in verse 10. Now, when I went into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of that one word that's kind of difficult to say, who was confined to his home. Why is the prophet homebound? Shouldn't the prophet be out preaching? Oh, well, partly it could be because of the reason in which he was stating. He said that there's a group of assassins that are coming in to take Nehemiah out and potentially will take out anybody else in their way. If there was a group of assassins that were coming in, more than likely some of us would turn our security alarm on at least. We'd stay in our house. We'd try to figure out how to have some sort of self-defense. And this prophet is putting on a display. He's putting on a display for Nehemiah to not just believe his words, but believe his words based on his own actions. Hey, I'm staying here, man, because there's some people that I've heard is coming to kill you, and they're going to kill you at night. And then he gives him a solution. Gives them a solution. Where should we go? Maybe it's not even here. We should go into the temple. We should go there because nobody's going to go in there for you. No one would dare go in there because it's unsafe. God lives there. And Nehemiah, God is for you. He's not against you. So why don't we just run into the temple together? Deception comes in two different ways according to this argument that Shemaiah is making to Nehemiah. First, it comes in the form of urgency. Urgency. Hey, they're coming to kill you. They're coming. It's not that they will come. It's not that they're planning on coming. No, it's that they're on their way. Deception comes sometimes as a means of urgency. People tell you, hey, listen, you got to do something immediately. You better act on this. Hey, did you know that some people are talking and they want you to do this or this or this or this? And it's urgency. Hey, hurry. Hey, don't take any time to really think about it and just respond. You know what happens when you move with haste? Oof, you make mistakes. You make big mistakes. Sometimes there's certain things in life when it gets hot, when the trial it starts to turn up the heat. And you feel like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? How am I going to fix this issue? What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And then all of a sudden, you make dumb decisions. Dumb decisions. What's really tempting here is that it's coming from a religious man. It's not coming from his brother. It's not coming from the guy down the street. It's coming from, to some degree, a pastor, a prophet. Man, how great is the temptation for him to give in to deception. Sometimes it comes in the form of urgency, and at other times it comes in the form of half-truths. You know what a half-truth is? A lie. A lie. How does Nehemiah respond to it? What's the lie? The lie is that you should go into the temple. You know, Nehemiah, you're a great man. You're leading all the people. Listen, you were a cupbearer to King Artaxerxes. You're a governor now. Why not just become a priest? Because that's not what God had called him to be. It's not in his DNA. Only the Levitical priest could go in there and live. It was according to the law. And what if Nehemiah were to have went into the temple? You know what that had done? What that would have done is it would have discredited him as a God-fearing man to all the people of Israel, because they would have known, according to the law, Nehemiah, you can't go in there. Why did you make that decision? And then he would have had to say, I was scared for who? For himself, for his life. Wow. What great temptation. What a great test. Then everybody would have known, not only are you not a religious man, you're not a God-fearing man, but also, what about us? You didn't even tell us. You didn't have a solution for us, did you? You're just looking to save yourself. And that's a lot of times what we're tempted to do. Save our own tail and forget about everybody else. You know what we do? When we face a test of deception, we ought to discern and refute it. Discern it and refute it. Tell it for what it is. That's a lie. And I ain't going to come down from building this wall, and I ain't going in to the temple where God lives. You know why? Because I fear God more than man. That's what Nehemiah said. I'd rather be out there with these assassins and seek to survive than try to survive in the presence of a holy God who people couldn't even come and touch the mountain in which he dwelt. Man, who's bigger in your mind? Your enemies or your friend? You know who your friend is? It's King Jesus. It's King Jesus. Is he bigger in your mind? The problem is with a lot of these tests is Nehemiah, the good thing is Nehemiah didn't give in to them, and he completed the wall. Great. Good for you, Nehemiah, right? You didn't give in to any of those. But for us in the room, if you're like me, you failed many tests, not just in the classroom, but in life. You failed them. The purpose for tests, some of the purposes for them, in James chapter 1, it talks about them. 2 purposes. One is to refine you. Some of you are in a test right now, whether it's a test of intimidation, test of deception, test of distraction, or some other test. You're in a test, and that test, that trial, that problem that you're walking through, it's to refine you, to make you more and more like the one who created you. And that's what we would want. It says, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith, with no doubting. For the one who doubts, he's like a wave of the sea that's driven and tossed by the wind. For he must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He's a double-minded man, unstable in all of his ways. Let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation, and the rich in his humiliation. Because like a flower of the grass, he will fade away. For the sun rises with its scorching heat, and it withers the grass. The flower falls, and its beauty perishes. So will the rich man fade away in all of his pursuits. But the one who remains steadfast under trial, if he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has prepared for those who love him. You know what tests are there for? It's to refine us, but it's also to provide a reward for us. He wants to reward you. He wants to help you. He doesn't want to take something from you. No, he wants to give you, it's to give something for you. That's what he's after. But lastly, tests are not just to refine you, and it's not just to reward you, but it's to rescue you. It's to rescue us, my friends. All of us need rescue in the room, whether it's from your past or it's for your future. Many of us in the room, we have tests that you cannot endure in your future, me included. They're a great test, and God has provided those tests, one specific test to rescue us. I'm going to tell you about a test that I took and I failed, but Jesus used it in my life. I was a junior. I'm going to be very honest with you. I was a junior in high school. It's periodic tables. I don't know if anybody knows what the periodic table is. In chemistry class, man. And I'd been distracted. The test of distraction. Well, I was distracted. And I did not study as I should. And then I faced a test of intimidation. I knew this big boy was getting ready to drop a big bomb on the test. It was going to be horrible. I was going to fail it. And so what did I do? I gave in to the fear, and I gave in to the deception, and I cheated. And I got caught. I remember, her name's Miss Kirby. Oof. It was tough. It was really hard. I remember feeling conviction the whole time because I was a Christian. I should have known better. Should have known better. And honestly, I'm sad about that. Really sad that I got caught. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I'm really sad that it was wrong. It was wrong. It's wrong on me. Now I got to reel you back in. But you know what she did? You know what she did to me? Man, what grace she gave to me. She wrote me up. She sent me to Saturday school. That's the grace she gave me. But you know what? She never brought it up to me. She wrote me up, and she never treated me any different. After Saturday school, I walked in on Monday, and she treated me the same. She gave me grace. There was consequence to my actions, but she gave me amazing grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a student like me. You know, she treated me like she always had. She joked with me and loved me and encouraged me. You know what's crazy is I grew up, I'd become a student pastor, and all of a sudden, her son becomes one of my students. And she never brought it up to him. She didn't shame me. And because of that, it made me, it formed me, helped me as a young man. You know, that's what Jesus does. When you fail a test, Jesus covers your failure. There's consequences, there is. We have to go to Saturday school, guys. You have to go to Saturday school. When you realize you failed the test, there is a perfect law set out for us from God above. And there's laws that none of us have been able to complete. There's a test that everyone has bombed. And because of it, we've cheated, we've done things that are wrong, we've spit in our Creator's face. And because of it, we deserve Saturday school. But you know what? Our true Saturday school for us as Christians happened on a Friday. And how it happened on a Friday was Jesus went in to take an exam. He was in a trial. And he took the fall for us. And he suffered on the cross for you and I. And he died. He was hidden in that tomb because of a great love. He's covering through his own blood, a strange thing as it is. According to the Bible, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sins. Without someone paying the price, there is no forgiveness for us. And that, my friends, is what he did on Friday, and how we know that it happened and that it was sufficient for us is because he came back to life on the Sunday. And because of that, man, you can endure any test that comes your way. So where are you? Where are you? Tests are not meant to just refine you. Tests are not just meant to reward you, but to rescue you. And man, if you need rescue today, you want forgiveness from God above, Jesus Christ has what you need. Would you come and receive it? Will you stand with me as I pray?